Licensed therapist Kimberly Haar had spent over a decade helping others heal from trauma until one day her own life was completely shattered. Her new book, Healing from Life's Deepest Hurts, Reclaiming Your Life After Grief, Loss, or Trauma, isn't just a memoir. It's a lifeline, a faith-filled therapy guide grounded in scripture and real-life recovery. Kimberly Haar joins us now to share her story. Welcome to 100 Huntley Street, Kimberly.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
Well, you know, your book is a beautiful story. It's a personal story that you've chosen to share, and how God has restored your life out of an incredible tragedy that happened in 2017. But before we go into that story, tell us what you love about your work.
Yes. Well, I have been a licensed therapist for almost 20 years. And I consider it very sacred work because I get to hold people's stories. And many times it's the first time they've really been able to talk about their deepest hurts. And so it is, I believe it's something God's called me to. And it is something I just absolutely consider an honor.
Oh, you know, your life was really, you'd been a therapist for about a decade by 2017, and your life was going on just sort of as averagely like other people's lives. Right. Tell us about the situations around your life in 2017 before this big traumatic incident we're going to get into in just a moment.
Well, let me back up a little bit to 2013, because in 2013, I made the hardest decision I've ever made in my life, and that was to divorce my first husband. We had been married 23 years, and there were patterns of infidelity, but because we had 4 children, I decided that I was going to stay in my marriage until 2013 I discovered an affair. And so at that point, I decided to divorce, and for 4 years, I was a single mom. I was making sure our youngest children, I had my twins, were about 15 at the time, and I wanted to make sure that they got out into college, and then I'd be able to focus on me again.
And in that time span, you met somebody who was very loving, very present. Tell us about Andrew, the person that you met.
Yeah. I met Andrew I woke up in January 2017, and something inside me said, this is the year you're going to be married again. And I had been single for 4 years. Yeah. And so on April Fool's Day, I went out with Andrew, and it was almost love at first sight. We dated almost every day for 30 days, and we both knew that we were going to marry.
Oh, you know, you guys had this wonderful relationship, and were you both following Jesus at the time? Were you both people of faith?
We both loved the Lord, and we just knew, you know, I was 50, he was 53, and we just knew this was it.
Yeah. And so from that beautiful high of knowing this is the person God has brought into my life, this is where I feel safe and loved and I belong, and we're going to get married. 2017, this wonderful year, suddenly something very tragic happens.
Yes.
Tell us what occurred that really shattered your life.
30 days after I met Andrew, my ex-husband had asked me to come to his home and talk to him about our adult children. We had done this many times before. We had a friendly divorce, and when I went to his home, he started talking to me about wanting to date me again and wanting another chance with me. And so I told him, I said, you need to move on because I've moved on. I found somebody that I'm getting very serious with. And my ex-husband looked at me and he made the comment, he said, maybe I'm going to need to go talk to that man. And it didn't make sense to me because I had not talked to him about it at all. But I called Andrew on my way home, and I said, can I come talk to you just for a minute? Because I wanted to warn him my ex-husband might make a nuisance of himself. And I said, I am so sorry. And I looked at him, and I said, Andrew, would you fight for me? And he looked down at me, and he said, yes, I would, because you're worth it. And little did I know that within 24 hours, he would not just be fighting for me, but Andrew was going to be fighting for his life. And at 2:30 in the morning, my ex-husband had broken into my home. He was intoxicated. He had a gun in his hand. And for the next 4 hours, I was assaulted. And then he kidnapped me, and he told me as punishment for ruining his life, I was going to have to watch as he murdered the man I had just started dating. So I didn't realize he had been stalking me, and so he then took me to Andrew's house.
Kimberly, on the way to Andrew's house, what was going through your mind?
You know, there was a lot going through my mind, but I was praying for Andrew. I was praying that the angels would surround him and protect him because I knew that my ex-husband was going to attempt to kill him.
So you arrive at Andrew's, and what happens next?
My ex-husband reached in the back seat. He got the gun. He loaded up with lots of bullets. But then he looked over at me and he said, "Now you go do what you need to do." And he left the keys in the ignition. And I didn't know at that point, I didn't know if I was going to live or die. So at this point, I knew I could get away. And I watched as he climbed the first few steps to Andrew's house, and Andrew had a big lead door, or a lead glass window in the front of his door, and I heard 3 gunshots, and I knew there was no way Andrew was going to survive this. So I jumped into the driver's seat, and I escaped to a supercenter just a few blocks away, and ran in screaming, "Call 911," and I was taken to a warehouse to wait for the police and the ambulance to come and get me. And from that point, I was taken to the emergency room. I would later learn that Andrew had been shot 10 times. And his son called my cell phone at the hospital. I'd only met him one time. And he said, "We're sorry this happened to your mom," because my daughter answered the phone. He said, "But we just think our parents need to go their separate ways." So in those moments, I'm in the emergency room, and all I know is my world has fallen apart. I've lost the man I love.
Yeah.
And I felt like, "God, have you been dangling a carrot in front of my face that I'm finally happy?" And now all this happened.
It's a big question. God, where are you when the worst thing unfolds?
That's right.
And people are plagued by that question. Was that just circling through your head?
In the beginning days, I continually asked the Lord, "Why did you let this happen? Why didn't you stop this?"
Yeah.
Especially, I had served Jesus all my life, and though God is not a bargain God, I kept telling him, "I did my part. I served you all the days of my life. You didn't do your part in keeping me safe."
Yeah.
And so it was lots of questions, lots of tears, lots of emotions in those first days.
Well, the beautiful twist and turn of things is that God moved in mighty ways, and you and Andrew actually recovered together.
We did.
And today you're married.
We've been married 8 years.
And in just a moment, we're going to have Andrew join us, and we're going to talk about your healing journey, what that looked like together, how your faith changed or grew, all of the different layers of where you were and where you are today in 2025 together. So we'll have that conversation in just a moment.
When you hear a story like that, when you hear that kind of a testimony, it's hard to understand how as humans we can endure and we can get through these difficult times. And the truth is, we can get through them because God is with us. And maybe your story is not like their story. Maybe the intensity is different. But that's not the point. The point is it's real to you. Your situation, your struggle, your trauma is real to you. I just want to let you know, you don't have to go through it alone. We're here not just to talk to you. There are people here in this studio, in this building right now who will pray with you. So right now you can call 1-866-273-4444 and you can share that struggle. You can share that burden, and someone will pray with you and they'll lead you to the tools that you need just to help you on this journey. I mean, wow. What an incredible story of strength and grace. And here's the good news. We're not done yet, because Kimberly's husband, Andrew, he's going to join her now for the second half of their story. It's raw, it's real, and it shows how faith and forgiveness can heal the deepest of wounds. Let's go back to that conversation, this time with Andrew.
And now joining us is Andrew Haar, Kimberly's husband, a survivor, a fighter, and a man whose story of courage and faith will inspire you. Welcome to 100 Huntley Street, Andrew. Thank you for being with both of us today here.
Thank you, Laura. Glad to be here.
Well, Kimberly shared, the story and the traumatic event that you so painfully experienced. Her ex-husband attacking her, assaulting her, and then kidnapping her and coming to murder you, essentially, shooting you 10 times. So what do you remember from that day? What do you remember from that experience?
It happened very quickly, a knocking at my door. So woken from bed, walking towards the door, and just bullets coming through a stained glass window. Before I knew it, I was on the ground and just getting shot more. And so I did not know what was going on. I think my body was in shock to some extent.
Well, Andrew, you were shot 10 times, and that would did create significant injuries. Would you mind sharing some of those injuries with us? Tell us what they were.
I was shot twice in the leg, once in the femoral artery, and that was the most damaging one. Twice in the back. Matter of fact, one bullet went under my clavicle, and back out, and then 6 in my arm. I've still got paralysis in my arm, and I've got the metal plate from elbow to shoulder, actually a bar, through the humerus with some cadaver and clamps, but for the most part, it sure beats the alternative.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And how many surgeries did you have in total, do you think?
There was at least 13 surgeries, and a part of that was going to another state to get connected with a top-notch surgeon. In the town we lived in, they wanted to just shorten my arm by 3 inches, and we found a surgeon in Dallas, Texas, that was a Navy SEAL type surgeon, that he said, if you could think it, we can do it, and your body will heal. And he was clearly a Christian man as well, so that was pretty neat.
That's God performing miracles within the hands of the surgeons.
Mm-hmm. Lost a lot of blood. If it wasn't for me somehow hunching over, maybe it was subconscious, I didn't realize it, it sort of provided a tourniquet, if you will, to perhaps preserve whatever blood there was left, save my life.
So much to go through. And Kimberly, at this stage, what's happening in your relationship? Are you tracking with him? Are you praying with him? What's going on?
I was trying to track him, but because it was a crime scene, he was under an assumed name in the hospital, so I couldn't find him.
Wow.
I did contact his assistant from work, and she told me, she said, in the beginning, when Andrew came to, he wanted to know how you were. He loved you. He wanted to be with you. But by the end of that first, second week, he had decided that we should go our separate ways. And so I was grieving. Our journeys were very different in healing. Andrew's was much more physical healing. Mine, even though I had physical healing on my body, the bruises were the least. It was the emotional healing for me.
And, there was a stage where in your healing you asked God, why did this happen? But now that you look back, you feel so differently about it. Tell us more about that.
Sure. I think that when I asked a lot about the why, and sometimes when we say, God, where were you? It comes across as more of an accusation than a question. It's more like we are saying, God, you weren't there. And I will say that after the 4 hours of when I was assaulted, I noticed and I sensed a presence in the room. And I knew it was an unseen presence, and I just knew it was the presence of God, but it was a very sad presence. And it was almost like I could sense the Lord reaching out and holding my hand. And there came a moment when I knew that if I died, I would not have died alone. Because Psalm 23 says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil because you're with me. And there was a real sense and a peace and a calm, and the fear left in that moment that I knew the Lord was there. If we want to know where God is, all we have to do is ask him, because God is there in our hardest moments.
Andrew, how did the Lord start stirring in your heart about Kimberly while you were recovering physically? So I know, eventually you started to be more conscious, and maybe your heart started shifting about whether you two should be together still. What happened?
I think my son, he thought he was trying to manage both of our children were trying to manage us, that maybe they shouldn't be together. And we had to sneak around a little bit. And we finally got to messaging each other and say, okay, my son will be gone at 3. Why don't you come up and let's talk?
I actually went to the hospital. He sent me a text message, and it said, hey, I'm alive. And I said, can I come see you? And he said, not yet. I have another surgery. He goes, I'll contact you in a few days. And a few days later, he said a visit would be nice, but come when my kids aren't here. So I snuck up to the hospital, and I walked in his room, and I said, Andrew, where does this leave us? And he looked at me, and he said, I don't know. He goes, I've seen the felony counts. He goes, I know what happened to you, and you're going to be messed up. And then he said, I know what happened to me, and I'm going to be messed up. And I looked at him, and I shook my finger in his face, and I said, Andrew Haar, you will never meet another woman like me. And 4 weeks later, we were engaged, and 4 months later, we were married. And it's been 8 years.
Oh, wow. Wow. Andrew, what did you think when she said, "You'll never meet another woman like me"?
I believed it, honestly. I mean, we had such fun on our very first date.
Yeah.
We literally met in a small diner. We spent hours there talking about everything. I knew she loved God. I knew she loved her children. We loved being around each other.
How would you describe your faith before and after?
My faith before, I don't know that I thought there was a real God. And, similar to, Peter in the Bible or Saul in the Bible, a moment comes when you just sense, there really is a God yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And, meeting Kim and her background and her religion has just helped tremendously. And, my faith grows more every day to that extent.
Yeah. Kimberly, one of the things you've done in this book is you tell your story in the first half, but the other half of this book carries tools in it, tools that you had used in therapy for a decade when this traumatic event happened to you. Tell us a bit about those tools and how you guys actually worked through them together to experience more healing.
Right. In the tools, I call them tools for growth and healing. And they're very practical tools. They're things like the power of friendship and community, because when something bad happens, it's normal. We want to pull away. We want to isolate ourselves, and that's exactly what the enemy wants us to do. He wants us to get away from those wise, loving people around us so that he can feed us lies that say things like, "My life is over, nothing will get better." And it's got tools of the power of prayer, the power of music, the power of knowing God's word and being able to partner with God says, the power of self-care, the power of journaling, the power of therapy. Right away after everything had happened, I did two things. I called my pastor and I called a therapist because it was like, okay, I just want people walking alongside me as I heal.
Today, you two are a very joyful couple and incredible connection, deep friendship. Tell us a bit more about your married life together today and your blended family.
Well, we both still work. Kim does her therapy practice, and I still work as an engineer for a gas company down in the States. We get to see our grandkids often. We have 2 grandkids nearby. We have another grandchild a few hours away. And we just love each other very much. We try to enjoy life.
Between the two of us, we're a little bit a cross between the Brady Bunch and the Waltons. I have 4 children, 3 are married. He's got 3, 2 are married, one of them has a serious boyfriend. So we've got 11 adult children between the ages of 27 and 35. So we are empty nested. And then, like he said, we've got 3 amazing grandkids.
And the life you were hoping for, Kimberly, in 2017 before that incident has unfolded with Andrew.
It
Here
has.
you are together. God has given you such a beautiful ending to your story. But of course, we've got many people tuning in right now who may not be experiencing the good part of their story. And they're wondering, how can it turn out? How can God even turn this around? Where is God in this mess? What is your word for the person watching right now? A word of hope, a hope moment that would encourage them no matter what they're facing. Andrew, we could start with you. And then Kimberly, what would you say?
I think ultimately understanding that God is a good God. He always has the best intentions for us. Evil and sin has been in the world since Adam and Eve, but we shouldn't allow that to rule and dictate the outcomes. Ultimately, we can prevail.
I think I would say to anyone watching is that your story is not over. Trauma, tragedy, pain, loss can rewrite our stories. They're not the way we intended them to be, but we don't let it have to be the end of our story, because God is in the business of restoration, and God promises that when he begins something, he is faithful to complete it. And I like to just tell people, in times of hardship, run to the Lord, not away from him, because he is there with open arms.
Such an important word you've both just shared. So much encouragement. And your story, is so full of hope despite the darkness that came against you. Kimberly, I'm so thankful you've written your story in this book, but also given people tools in this book as a seasoned therapist about how they can overcome their own grief or trauma or loss. Kimberly, Andrew, thank you so much for being with us today and for being with the 100 Huntley Street family.
Thank you for having us.
Well, maybe your life changed in a moment, just like Kimberly and Andrew's, and maybe you're wondering if healing is even possible. Friends, it is. The pain is real, but so is the presence of God. And when you don't know how to move forward, He meets you in the silence and the tears, in the wreckage. When you don't know what to do, He does. And so God is there for you, and we want to remind you that we're also there for you. If you need prayer right now, call our 24/7 prayer lines, 1-866-273-4444. And if you are experiencing domestic violence or abuse, please also call our prayer partners, because they can direct you to resources that can support you and encourage you and help you go to a place of safety and healing.